What is good, everybody? Juliana Page here. I want to share with you something that is super helpful if you ever find yourself what ifing. Okay, we've been there, we've done it, and a lot of times we do it in a negative direction. What if this happens? What if, what if, what if? And pretty soon we're in an anxiety mess, right? That's harder to get out of. So here are some things that might be helpful. One is writing down the worst case scenario, like literally, like journal about it. What if this happens? Because the benefit of doing an exercise like that is just because you give yourself, like if you're already going to do it, here's my thought. If you're already going to do it, if you're already going to think through the worst case scenario, why not journal about it for a minute and see, okay, if that were to happen, you know what? I'd figure it out. I'd do this, I'd do this, I'd do this, right? But after you do that, so let that play full out. Let that movie go. See it all the way through. Give yourself permission to just be a part of that movie. Let it play out. Then write down all of the what ifs of the exact opposite. Show yourself which one do you want to partner with. You can use your imagination to create the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. Or you can use your mind to just be numb and not do anything with this beautiful gift that you have, which is probably not you. So the second round would be writing out what if, like what is the best thing that could happen? I usually say that that's partnering with God, because God can do far greater than you dare ask, think, or imagine. So yeah, that's cool. You dared to think about that. That is what you imagine and what you think can happen. But what if you put some God on that? Imagine then what can happen. It's far greater than you dare ask, think, or imagine. But do you dare to believe that? So my encouragement, so what are some examples? Like, why would this be valuable? Well, when I work with clients, I hear things like, what if I quit this business or this thing that I'm a part of and it no longer aligns with who I am? Well, there might be some inquiry there. Like, do you just need to be in a better state when you're doing some of those activities? Is it genuinely not something that is aligned with who you are and your lifestyle and what you're about and that you can't see yourself doing anymore? What if you were to quit? What would be the positive things that would happen because of that? And what would be some of the consequences of what would happen with that? So it's an example of a business. It could also be a relationship. Maybe you've hit your wall. This is like the final straw. This is the last time, blah, blah, right? Like you just can't take it anymore. Okay, maybe that's the case. Maybe it's, what do they call it? Irreconcilable differences, right? Like maybe you've reached that point. However, what are the consequences of severing that relationship? Have you really given it your all? Since when is giving up a relationship even an option, right? Like, what are you bringing to the relationship? What are you pouring into it every day, right? So really giving yourself, when you do an exercise like this, where you what if the worst case scenario, you what if the best case scenario, you can then see, I've got options. I've got options, right? We love to say that too. I've got options, right? You do. You are a free indeed entity, right? That can make wise decisions if you so choose. So give yourself the grace and the freedom and the permission to explore. It's not bad if I play out these scenarios. I'm not necessarily premeditating that I'm going to do one thing or another, but I'm at least going to explore it and allow myself to process through what would that be like? Because what you can then do is you can get to the bottom of why maybe right now you feel like quitting, or you feel like leaving a relationship, or you feel like giving up some of the things that you're committed to, whether that's volunteer, like things that actually fulfill you. Like you could ultimately just need a vacation or a timeout for a minute, or you could need to have a difficult conversation that you haven't had yet, or you could need to readjust your priorities and your schedule and the amount of time that you devote to things. It might not just be an ultimatum, but sometimes as fancy humans, we go to straight ultimatum mode, right? Black and white, on or off, right? We just have a switch. So this is an exercise to allow you to really process and develop, if that is something that you ultimately want to do, another great tip here is that whenever you have a lot of excitement, that's great, but I would still give it 24, 48 hours. You don't want to just act on that excitement. Same thing if you have anger or frustration or a lot of emotion. Think about it, like pray about it and let it subside. Let that energy subside so you get back to a place of peace, and then you can execute with wisdom, with logic, right? With good common sense, so that you're not acting impulsively one way or another either. Okay, so hopefully this helps as a decision-making model exercise for you to do. One other thing that I want to leave you with on today is something that I do quite a bit is I say that I course correct with the word of God, because I know for me personally, I joke about this sometimes, but you know, when you're living it, it's not funny in hindsight maybe, and you can laugh about it because you're like, oh my goodness, right? But as it's happening, it can be really heavy and really stressful. But I would have anxiety about the future because I would constantly be thinking about the future in a worst case scenario. In a scenario, well, if that happens, then this is going to happen. If this happens, then this is going to happen. I have to have plan A, B, C, D, and F because, right? And pretty soon you're just overwhelmed to the max and you don't even want to take action, right? So I call that future tripping. I was really good at visioning the future in a way that was not positive. I was not hopeful, really. I was not joyfully expectant about how things were going to unfold. I was waiting for a shoe to drop. I was looking for where it might go wrong so that I could make sure and be able to pivot around that. And that came from a core belief of life is unsafe that was planted in childhood. So addressing the future tripping by itself would not actually get to the bottom of what the problem is. There's a core belief that I had that life is not safe, or I need to take control. I need to make this happen, right? And then the fear of knowing that some things you can't make happen and some things you aren't in control of. So then what, right? And that can create a lot of anxiety, and you can live there as your emotional home for a long period of time. So that's why this exercise is valuable. But what I love to do, what I have found to be uber helpful in my life, is helping people course correct with the word of God. I call it Spirit-Filled Real Talk with Juliana on my podcast. I bring truth into some real talk, right? Because what good is real talk? There's no truth in it. Just saying. All right. And what is it motivated by? That would be my other question. So there you go. There's some of the heart behind what that is. But one of the things that I do is I try to debunk some of the stuff that's out there, whether it's a meme, whether it's a myth, whether it's like a cool quotable, right? So for example, one that I've heard all the time, one that people throw around a lot is success leaves clues. Success does leave clues, right? Like we've seen people really achieve success, and if you applied their strategy, you could do the same thing. You can immerse yourself in what they did, and you could learn, and you could execute, and you could hit that same level. But what if they're not your clues? Sure, success leaves clues, but what if they're not your clues? Then what, right? So John Bevere wrote a really good book, Good or God, right? And I love the fact that it's simplified. There's a lot of good that you can be doing, a lot of good, right? But not all of it is God. And unless the Lord builds the house, it's not going to stand, right? So wouldn't it be greater to know that at the beginning of a thing? Especially if it's not the beginning of a thing that matters, it's the end of a thing. So wouldn't you want to start with God so that you can end with God? I'm just saying, because that's a lot of pain. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of frustration. That's a lot to go through if it's not even what's for you. Just saying. So success leaves clues, but what if they're not your clues, right? So think about that for a second. What are you using to navigate? Where are you getting direction from? Who do you work for? Who do you represent? If you believe that you are a spirit-led human, or you're a spiritual being having a human experience, you probably operate from a different government, from a different system, right? But are you? If you say that and then you don't live it, you're out of integrity. And if you're out of integrity, you know that. Your soul knows that. And you will never be at peace when you're out of integrity, right? So think about that. Why am I presenting this? I'm presenting this because sometimes we come up with things like the what ifs because we're judging and we're comparing and we're, getting involved in imposter syndrome, and we're looking at what other people are doing or how far along they're going or what strategies they've implemented or what they have to say. And pretty soon we take in all of this feedback, and none of that was productive for us. None of that was building faith, building confidence, building character, helping you grow and develop, right? Because when you start comparing, you're already devaluing and dishonoring yourself. Think about that, right? And then when success leaves clues, but what does God give you? Do you want to follow the ways of the world and ways people are doing things, or do you want to listen to your Creator and be led by your Creator? Sometimes it takes real talk. Sometimes it takes surrender. Sometimes it takes being still when all you want to do is run, when all you want to do is numb out, when all you want to do is deny the fact that you're off course. But you can get back on course and you can change things. So some of your what ifs are actually coming because you've been comparing yourself to other people. Some of the what ifs are coming because you haven't seen success as fast as this person, or this person can do it like this. How come you can't? Maybe you're not fit for it, right? It's coming because you're comparing it to something. Because I bet you at the beginning of a thing, you probably had passion, you probably had enthusiasm, you probably had excitement. But then when you let too many people speak into you, and you might have even let the wrong people speak into you, you shared, right, all of this goodness that was brewing up in you that was very vulnerable with the wrong people, that discouraged you, that said how hard it's going to be, that gave you a narrative that is now challenging you. And now suddenly you want to quit because, I don't know, a couple months in, couple years in, it's not flowing the way you thought it would flow. Well, again, whose narrative are you following? God's thoughts are not our thoughts, and God's ways are not our ways. Something to think about. So that's something that I like to do. I remember feeling like I wanted a manual for life. Sure enough, there is one. I just wasn't reading it or living by it, right? Or being led by it in any kind of way. So how could I expect to have any sort of inner peace if I'm not navigating according to the word, right? Or even course correcting, because we all need course correction sometimes. Just get in a car, okay, and go on a road trip. Watch what Garmin, if you still have one of those, Google Maps, Waze app, whatever you have these days, people still use all of those things. But imagine what it says: rerouting, recalculating, make a legal U-turn, right? Like, we need that. That's part of life, right? But it's important to really understand what it is that you're navigating by, whose direction you're taking, who it is that you're representing, what it is that you're actually about, because it is so easy right now to be caught up in the noise, to become deluded, to become distracted, to become overwhelmed, and to really get out of tune with with your rhythm and what it is that you're here to be, do, offer, share, speak, right? So my encouragement would be, if you are one of those what-ifers, a lot of times that is highlighting a lack of faith. That's highlighting doubt, fear, insecurity. It's highlighting unbelief, right? So it's highlighting an area that you can work with God on, okay? And maybe it's not necessarily about making a decision in that moment of time. Maybe it's just bringing it to God and asking for wisdom. Maybe it's just realigning. Maybe it's just restructuring your time and how you spend your time. Maybe it's removing some of the things that are in your life. Maybe there's some voices you shouldn't be listening to anymore. Maybe there's some people that you're following that aren't a good fit for you in this season, right? Maybe you need to take a break from constantly doing all the things that you feel like you should be doing so that you can do the things that you know to be doing, right? So that's my encouragement, that if you are somebody that aspires to live a spirit-led life, I believe that that kind of navigation is like no other navigating that's out there. You can be married. You can be, you can have really close friends. You could have a great spiritual covering. You could, have a great boss. You could have great mentors and coaches and friends in your life. But if you don't have direction from God from yourself, where are you actually getting that direction from? And how solid is it as far as foundation for you? That's my encouragement. I think sometimes just giving yourself permission to explore how the narrative would play out is very freeing. And it saves you the consequences, because you can play it out and you can see, if you go this direction, this is what it's going to look like. But if you go this direction, it's going to look like this, right? But then ultimately, you want to go the direction that God is leading, is my encouragement. So yes, success leaves clues, but are they your clues? Yes, hustle and heart will set you apart. But what if you're already set apart? And what if you just need to set yourself apart so you can consecrate yourself, so you can receive the wisdom and direction and creativity and flow you need to show up differently in your life? Sometimes that's the answer. Thinking differently, expressing yourself differently, carrying yourself differently. So the answer is not always the quick ultimatum, light switch kind of deal. A lot of times it requires a process of thinking through it, a process of praying about it, a process of realigning and then readjusting and taking new action. It's not always this instant quick fix thing. All right. But I know for me, for example, when I was so used to being high achieving, accomplishing a lot of things and doing a lot of good things, there was so much relief realizing that I didn't have to do that anymore and that I could just do the things that I was led to do. And that was enough. And God would cover the details. If I showed up in excellence and I did what I was led to do and I course corrected or responded with that instant obedience, God would cover the details. And even if I got off track, God would get me back on track. He goes after the one. He'll come after me. I'm going to try to cooperate so he doesn't have to do that. But you see what I'm saying? So there's nothing like navigating with God. Letting God take the lead, having the relief of not having to have all the answers and letting some mystery be involved in the dance of life. And that's my encouragement. Whenever you've got that, it doesn't always mean make a decision. In fact, it's usually wait 24, 48 hours and go through a process of really allowing yourself to walk through it and see what that looks like. Go through this one and see what it looks like. Pray about it and just be open and receive God's thoughts, God's ways, and then act accordingly. But be careful how much strategy and wisdom and coaching and counsel and expertise and judging and comparing and all this stuff that you're putting into you, because how then are you going to hear the clues that you need for you? You can hear thousands of clues, but if they're not your clue, none of them will work. All right, so just riffed that out for you. I hope that helped you. If you are caught in what ifing, let it play out. Give yourself the luxury, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, heck, a half an hour, journal that sucker out. Live it out. If you're going to go there, go all the way, man, right? At least you're just writing it out. There's way more unhealthy things that you could do. So just write it out. Give yourself the satisfaction of being like, right? Get it out. Then when you see it, make a decision. Pray about it. Then decide. Doesn't have to be, again, a quick fix. All right, humans. I hope this blessed you. If you are interested in keeping up with the dailies, you can follow me over on IG at Miss Juliana Page. There's also a U 2.0 self-mastery course over on my website, julianapage.com, among other resources to develop your relationship with God if that is something that you are curious about or need some help with. Heck, I know I absolutely did. So, all right, guys, until next time, stay blessed. If this message blessed you, make sure that you copy the link and share it with a friend. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. All right, guys, stay